Today's reading is from Astavakya Gita, the Song of Astavakya. This is the translation by Ramana Maharshi. Astavakya was a sage and Janaka was his student. And Janaka made this declaration when he realized the truth of his own nature. This was his statement to his teacher. The poise of mind that springs in one who is without anything is rare, even when one possesses nothing but a loincloth. Therefore, giving up renunciation and acceptance, I live happily. There is trouble of the body somewhere, trouble of the tongue somewhere, and trouble of the mind somewhere. Having renounced these, I live happily in life's supreme goal. Fully realizing that nothing whatsoever is really done by the self, I do whatever presents itself to be done, and I live happily. The yogis who are attached to the body insist upon action or inaction. Owing to the absence of association and of disassociation, I live happily. No good or evil accrues to me by staying, by going, or by sleeping. So I live happily, whether I stay, or go, or sleep. I do not lose by sleeping, or gain by striving. So giving up thoughts of loss and elation, I live happily. Observing again and again the fluctuations of pleasure, pain, and so on, under different conditions, I have renounced good and evil, and I am happy. So, are we happy? So the usual way of being, before we know something of the truth, is for us to run away from the difficult circumstances in our lives, or to cling to the circumstances we think will make us happy. Yes, you know this? This is the usual way. But the sages tell us, as Janaka has here, that it's not through renunciation and it's not through clinging to any circumstance or any external that true happiness will be found. In fact, he says, renouncing the opposites, right? The duality, both sides of the external life that we're living, no matter what the form of the duality, whether it's a duality of good or evil, or comfort or discomfort, or whatever. It's only by losing interest, if you will, in either side of the dualities of mind, of body, and of world, that we're able to experience directly the pure recognition, I am happy. Most of the spiritual traditions begin somewhere with unhappiness and lead us through some form of practice to come to some place or to some state or to some understanding that happiness was already here. And for some, this can be a relatively quick journey. Hearing the truth, if this makes sense to you, you will just drop your seeking. You will just stop. You'll stop seeking happiness. You'll stop clinging to what you think will make you happy, and you'll stop avoiding what you think is going to make you unhappy. And you'll just come directly into here now, dropping the past and the future, even the present. Just coming into this moment. And then the realization will come to you when you're no longer clinging to anything and you're no longer pushing anything away. That in this moment you are fulfilled. You are complete. You are whole. And this is the meaning of happiness. And that you are this happiness. I know a lot of you have heard this in all sorts of different teachings and so on, that and this is true of how to get ahead, it's true of how to be happy in the world, it's true of all sorts of things. But the teaching is often, or the guidance is often, act as if, right? Just act as if you're abundant, and you will be. But the sages tell us a similar kind of thing. And that is that rather than searching for happiness, if we accept that we are already happy and act as though we are, that happiness will follow. Why? Because this is already our nature. This is not something we're going to gain by getting all the conditions perfect. The right partner, the right job, the right house, the right car. By putting all of the pieces in place, we will somehow realize that we are happy. And interviews or the biographies of very powerful and very wealthy people, you often find that at the end of their journey they realized that all that they had achieved and all they had acquired did not result in happiness. And so the sages say, recognize that you are that which is aware, and that in this awareness you are happy, you are contented. But how do we do this? Because we're so often drawn. We spend so much of our lives in our memories, projecting and planning for a future that may or may not ever arrive. And so the sages say, remain here now. Drop all of this dialogue in the mind. This looking back through the file cabinet of our mind at old documents. Or projecting ourselves into some imaginary future, even whether that future is a moment from now, or a day from now, or a year from now, or 10 years from now. All of this activity of looking into the past and looking into the future causes us to step right over the now. And it's only in now that this happiness, which is our nature, can be unearthed. You see, the other two activities, or even the three activities of past, present, and future, spending our time in those mind states never allows us to see what's already here. We're always somewhere else. Somewhere other than here. But to many of us, the thinking that if we just remain here and don't do anything else sounds very scary. But who will take care of me? How will I get by? How will I protect myself from what happened in the past, from that happening again with someone else or with the same person? All of these concerns come up when we try to just remain here. So this is really the field of our endeavor, if you will. But it's not the endeavor to do something or accomplish something, is it? It's actually the endeavor to stop doing something and remain here. And let life be experimental. If I do nothing but remain here, knowing I am aware, what happens? And then as a consequence of doing that, being able to be present as presence itself with whatever arises, accepting nothing and rejecting nothing, just being here in this moment. with whatever it brings. Then we can begin to see that beneath our concern, beneath our mind state, beneath the duality that Janaka is talking about, putting down in order to realize happiness, we begin to get an intuition that there is something else going on here. And we can begin to ask ourselves, what is this? Or who am I? And this inquiry, this questioning, becomes the support we use in order to stay here in this moment without fear, concern, upset, jealousy, anger, and just to flow with the currents of our life, knowing that we are something other than the currents of our life. Each and every one of us right now at this moment has some story about that's happening in our lives outside of this room, don't we? There's something going on in every single one of us. But ask yourself, are you that? Are you that story? Or are you that which sitting here right now, in this silence, in this sense of wholeness, that which feels complete? Even that story is going on. Where is that story now? Maybe it's still going on in your mind, but you're here in this moment. So are you that story? Or is that story somewhere else in this moment? See, we come here just to practice this freedom from our own stories. That's all we're doing here, in a way. We come in here and put everything down, and for an hour we give ourselves the opportunity to step away from the story. Even if we come here thinking that by coming here somehow we'll solve the problem, right? Don't we sometimes come to satsang thinking, whatever it is I'm dealing with over there, I have to get out of it for a little while, so maybe if I just go and get out of it, the problem will be solved? So even if that's our motivation for coming, just the support of one another, of being in satsang, helps us to step out of that attempt for a moment. Gives us the opportunity, even if we just come here and fall asleep, there's an indication in that we felt safe enough, distant enough from our problem to finally rest. Even even if you come here and what you do for an hour is take a nap, because you feel separate from your problem, this is a great benefit to you. I once was part of a Sangha in California at Tangpulu Kaba'ai Monastery. And there was a man who came every Saturday faithfully. We had about a 3-hour sit period there. And this man came every week. And every time he sat down, within a couple of minutes, he was asleep, leaning against the wall. And after about 4 or 5 months of sleeping through every single sit, he finally said to the teacher, "I don't think I'm getting anything out of this. I just come here and I fall asleep every time. I get up and I go outside and go for a walk," because I don't know if you know, but in Vipassana practice it's traditional if you're falling asleep all the time. They give you some instruction like sit on the edge of a step, right? Or sit on the edge of a cliff. Or stand up, because if you stand up, right, you're less likely to fall asleep because you'll fall over. So they give you all these instructions around scaring yourself in some way so that you don't fall asleep. This is the traditional way of dealing with sleepiness. But the meditation master that was there at that time just looked at him and said, "No problem, don't worry." And he said, "But all I do is come here and sleep." He said, "Don't worry, just keep coming. You must need the rest." After about a year or so, he stopped falling asleep. And from then on, I was there for another 1.5 or 2 years after that, practicing with this particular group, or sitting with this particular group. He never fell asleep again after that. And one day he just said, "I don't know, it just left." And the master said, "Yes, that's right. Whatever is born will die. Don't worry." So whatever difficulty we're having, our task as sadhaks is just to understand that there is no problem. There's no problem here, and there is no problem there.
I have a problem with these teachings in my own way. It's not
There's
teachings.
no problem here, there's no problem there.
Yeah,
There's
the
a problem
teachers.
with the teachings.
No. The teachings are not the problem. I'm the problem.
Yeah.
Yes. No, the teachings aren't the problem.
This is the central proposition of a
Yeah.
me, is
Yeah.
that I am the problem. Okay, so go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
I'm a very proactive person, actually, in a lot of ways, because I feel it's hard for me to just be passive and say, see what comes, because I have fears that push me forward, and
I think that's what I just said.
yes, but I feel to be passive and just let the world come to me. I don't think, for me, like, it brings up all kinds of doubt and insecurity and disbelief and fear and all kinds of things.
So, do you understand these things that you just listed?
Yeah.
They are not things. This is a thing.
Yeah, their mind states.
Their ideas.
Their ideas.
Their thoughts.
Yes.
So, what gives our thoughts power?
Life. You have to go shopping for food. You can't sit there. Nobody's going to bring it to you.
You have to go shopping for food, but it's not the thought, I need to go shopping for food, which is powerful. It's the belief in that thought, isn't it? It's belief in the truth of that thought.
Well, right now, yes, but
Understand it. First of all, it's not the best attitude to think that I have to go shopping for food is on the same level with that whole list that you just gave.
No, it's not on the same
See, because
level.
that's
That
a
was a
Yeah,
little
that's
mild
an-
example.
Yeah, but that
'Cause
kind
I
of
don't want to talk about
but
what's
that
the real
kind of
story here.
oversimplification
Yes.
is what gives thought power. To think that I have to go shopping is on the same level with all this difficulty that I have in life.
No, it's not on the same level. I just
Okay.
don't want to talk about what's going on so much. So that was a very mild example, but that's not really what I'm really talking about.
So let's come back to the more difficult things.
Okay. I have to have a
What-
place to live. How's that? I have
Yeah.
fears of homelessness.
Yes, I understand that.
They're very strong.
Yes.
So, right now I
So
need to...
what prevents you from acting? Because you need someplace to live.
Oh, what prevents me from acting?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing. What
No,
what requires you to take the position that because you need to find a place to live, that is me? There is a me that has to do that. There's a me that suffers as a consequence of having to do that. There is a me that's afraid of being homeless.
Yeah.
I'm not debating whether the thoughts are present or not.
Mm-hmm.
What gives them power?
Insecurity.
Which belongs to
Me?
me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
Who is
that's
this
a hard
me?
one to get. That's hard to let go of that.
Who is this me? Yeah, there is no doubt about that.
Yeah.
If
okay.
this way of being in the world
Yes.
were easy,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't need to sit in this room.
Right.
Everyone, in fact, is already enlightened, but everyone would realize, if it were easy,
Mm-hmm.
that they are enlightened.
Yeah.
Our journey, our task in this life is to come to realize who we are. Right? I mean, you've accepted that already because we met in India and you were already seeking and searching, right? So, this is something you've known for a long time and you've been trying to work out. But if I hear you right, what you're saying is that in this moment when things are not ideal for you, the strong belief that I am this me who is in danger or is suffering
Mm-hmm.
becomes stronger than
Yeah.
this way of being which you've been considering for a long time.
Yeah, it kind of does take over.
Yeah, it takes over.
It can, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has that way of coping with the challenges in your life resolved anything so far? Over all the years that you've been...
Well, I don't know. Because I've
Good answer.
managed, I don't know.
Because you managed what?
Because somehow I've managed to arrive here.
Yes.
So there's a belief system back here that says it's because
Yes.
of my efforts that I
Yeah,
have arrived.
but you don't know. You just
Yeah,
said,
I
but you
don't
said,
know.
but I don't
I
know.
don't know. I mean, yeah, I question that belief system for sure.
Okay.
But it still pops up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But despite your not knowing, you are
Mhm.
still here.
Yeah. Yes.
And yet, you're not able to give up the idea that if you struggle in the way in which you're struggling, you will somehow resolve the situation for me.
Yeah.
This despite the fact that that's never worked for you. And you are still here. Which some might say sort of proves the point that your being here has little or nothing to do with the circumstances or what you do about them. So if you were able to do other than what you're doing, would that solve the problem? Because what you're doing, you said you've been doing it this way for a long time, and that hasn't seemed to have solved the problem.
Yeah, the problem keeps coming up, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
So try something different. Face your fear. You say, I'm not suggesting to you, and that's not what this reading was about, that you become passive and do nothing.
Yeah, that's what I get confused about. I think that's what's
It's
being
that you
said to
don't
me.
become
It's,
aggressive externally
okay.
without knowing what is happening here, internally. So that everything that happens on the outside doesn't become the cause for fear, but rather the opportunity to ask the question, am I aware? What is aware? What is happening here? And to see what happens when I make the notion of me as the controller, the doer, the fixer, the problem solver, more important than the recognition that you are. You see, in this life we can only do what we do, right? I mean, our hands are tied in some ways. We can only do what we do. We do have a choice about how much power we give to circumstances and we give to thought. This is really the only control we have. Everything else is going to happen as it happens. So if this fear is here, what if you just stopped? And I don't mean become passive, because you understand when I'm speaking to you, I see it in your face, you understand exactly how much effort is required for you to stop. For you not to give power to your own thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
your own fears, right? You understand it.
Mm.
Then ask yourself, am I not stopping because it's easier to do the dance of me than it is to give up the dance of me? Is it?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. possibly, yeah, I'll have to
Sit with
sit
it.
with that one,
Mhm.
yeah.
You see, the dance of me, of mine, the dance of I as a woman of an age, living in a certain place and so on, whatever the story of I, me is. This is a very, very powerful story. There isn't any doubt about it. No one's debating that. But understand that its power comes from the one who believes in it. It's not inherent in living. It's inherent in belief systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is why we call it conditioning. Develops over a whole lifetime or lifetimes. These things that we grapple with in any given moment in any particular life, right? But what happens if you just say no? I don't want to do this anymore. Does it mean that all of the circumstances immediately right themselves and your whole life is about lying on a cushion on the beach somewhere under a palm tree with a coconut in your hand and...
Sounds good.
Huh?
Sounds
No,
good.
absolutely not, right? If that's your dharma, if that's the karma of your life in this lifetime, you would already be doing that. But that is not what's happening, right? For you, something else is happening. But who's the one that thinks there is anything at all happening? See, this is not an idle question. This is not a conceptual question.
Yeah.
What have you been searching for? And if you haven't found it in the world, when will you become willing to stop looking there? So just in terms of the issue, I know that's central that you mentioned, that you need to find some place to live.
Yeah.
Is that something you can do 24/7? Does it get done quicker or resolve itself more quickly because you worry, stress, fret, and are upset 24/7 because you're in that kind of a circumstance right now? No, it doesn't. So when we face these kinds of difficulties, we do what we can do in any given moment when we can do them, right? If you need to make a phone call, if you need to go talk to someone, you do those things in that moment. But you're not bound by them or by the thought that if I don't keep this forefront in my mind 24/7, this will never happen. I have to be worried, stressed, upset, and problem solving every minute of every day. Well, is that really true? First of all, if you put yourself in any circumstance and then you say, I have to do this so concentratedly, so focused for 24/7, you'll collapse yourself physically over the stress. Won't you? Because minds and bodies are not designed this way, to be kept under this kind of pressure. In fact, they function much better when there's an ease and an openness in them. So this is not the call to do nothing. It's the call to do nothing in between doing something. This is a place to start, you see, is to understand that you do what you can do, but it's in the spaciousness of stopping that potentialities or opportunities that maybe you weren't even aware of can come to you or be drawn to you. sometimes it'll make the appearance of, someone will come up to you and just say, oh, I hear you're looking for someplace to live. But if that doesn't happen, then what? Well, you can make a phone call. You can, look at Craigslist. You can do all of the normal things, but that should take, for most people, that's going to take about a half an hour in the morning, right? Or an hour to do all those things. Check all the sources for that day, right? This is just to deal particularly with your issue around housing. You can do all of that in about an hour in the morning. So what are you doing with the other 23 hours? This is the field of not knowing. So you do what you can to solve those problems. But in between, what are you doing? Because your practice, your way of wanting to change this habit pattern is to stop. So if you're fretting and worrying and carrying on all day long and bemoaning your situation, you are not stopped. You are supporting the notion that you have a problem. And this is happening in the mind, right? Again, you don't need to be worried about this or be critical of yourself. You just need to notice. Because one of the things that happens when we get ourselves or find ourselves in a difficult circumstance is that the story of me, which stretches back to the moment we were born, tends to come to the fore. And we tend to start to relate to everything that's happening throughout the day the same way that we've related to it throughout our lives. We somehow think that the reason we got to be, in my case, 70 years old was because of this desire, this recognition that I am someone and I can solve problems and I have a mind and I can do this and this is all in my control. But this is the fallacy of it. There's much more control in not knowing. Why do I say that? Because in order to remain for any period of time in not knowing, you have to control the story of me, not the circumstances in which you find yourself.
I think I just needed to hear that again because
Yeah. I'm happy to say
I
it.
forget and then I have
Yeah.
to come back. Yeah, thank you.
It's a good example, week after week, we have to have this conversation. We have to start somehow, right now, in this difficult circumstance which you are in. This helps everyone to understand that in some way we're all in difficult circumstances. The answer isn't just for your circumstances,
Yeah.
it's for everyone's
Mhm.
circumstances.
Mm.
And in fact, what is happening in some ways is that you've already found the way out of your own story. You just need someone else to remind you.
Mm. Yeah.
So happy to
I
do
just
that.
forget. Yeah, thank you.
I notice an ease and effortlessness with which I get caught up in my story of me, especially if there's an emotion. I just tumble back into it. It's so easy.
Mm.
And then,
Yeah, this is that habit I was talking about with Rosemary.
but then I also
Goes back a
notice
lifetime.
that when I drop it and I am just present here in the moment, there's a sense of just relaxing. So one of them is effortless and it's momentum, and then the other one is actually really effortless. And I can't understand why I keep tumbling back into the story when that one feels so good. Right.
So, conditioning has momentum associated with it. So if I spend my whole day worried and upset and doing the story of me and mine, and then at the end of the day, I spend 5 minutes calming myself down, and then I go to sleep. What's going to be the dominant momentum the next morning? Is it going to be in the peace and the calm? Or is it going to be in the unbridled supportive conditioning that went on for the whole rest of the day? So, just understand this from a very practical point of view. What you think about and what you reference all of the time is what becomes conditioned. That's why Bhagavan told Annamalai Swami, just ask the question, who am I? Throughout your day. And Annamalai Swami came back a few days later and said, Bhagavan, I did what you said and I decided to count how many times I had to go and do the inquiry. And he said, yesterday I had to do the inquiry 700 times. Bhagavan said, very good, continue. But the thing is that Annamalai Swami now is recognized as one of the few fully enlightened devotees that Ramana acknowledged by the end of his life. The reason was he flipped his conditioning. He saw it. He met it 700 times in a day and continued doing that for years. He was with Ramana for many, many, many years before Bhagavan said, good, you're done, get out. And he threw him out of the ashram. He had lived in the ashram for more than a decade and was a principal, had been the one who had organized and supervised all of the building of the whole ashram. But the moment that he came to Bhagavan and sat down in silence and Bhagavan recognized his awakening, his realization, he said, like that? And Annamalai Swami said, no, don't want to do that. He said, you cannot come back anymore. And Annamalai Swami left and built himself a straw hut on the outside of the wall of the ashram and lived there the rest of his life. And never again entered the ashram, because that was the instruction of his master. But the thing was that within a very short period of time, then lots of devotees began coming to sit with Annamalai Swami. His realization was palpable, and so people came. So this story is just there to remind you that you are not your conditioning. So if it goes on most of the time for you, and you find yourself caught up in it a lot, this is not a defect. It's not a defect. It just isn't true. You are not that. You're not this conditioning. So, you start from that premise and understand that who you are is always already here, but you aren't recognizing it. So you just continue throughout the trials and tribulations of your conditioning to remind yourself, I am that which is aware. And you do that until that momentum becomes the dominant conditioning. So this may mean for many years, every single moment of every day, everything that comes up that you feel the slightest bit of identification with, you say, I am not that. This feeling, this emotion, this difficulty, this circumstance, I am not that. And then you begin, I am that which is aware. Use a thorn to remove a thorn, right? a positive thought to remove a negative thought. And eventually, the momentum of that inquiry, of that recognition, of acting as if, yes, that's how I started this conversation, by acting as if happiness is your nature. Act as if you are an awakened being, even you have not a clue what that